I'd like to call this meeting to order and welcome everyone this evening to the Monday, June 16th, 2014 meeting of the Williamson County Board of Education. Before we get started, I'd like to ask everyone to please silence or turn off your cell phones. I'd like to thank Deputies Chapman and Hooper for being here this evening to provide our security. We appreciate your presence. Thank you so much. Next item on the agenda is the pledge. If you would please stand and join Board Member P.J. Mazzara for the pledge, and please remain standing for a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda, and before we do that, board members, you passed out just a moment ago some papers that support the agenda item 3G. This is an addition to your agenda, which is additions to the high school course list for 2014-15. Also, we had, at the work session, we were given new pages for items 3C, 2, 3, and 4, which is page 98A, 98B, and 98C. You also had at your place this evening a new page for page 115. This is item 3F. The information that was on page 116 was correct, but the goals that were on page 115 were a different set of goals that we did not adopt. So what we did adopt when we adopted our board goals is reflected in the replacement page. Are there any other corrections before we move forward with the approval of the agenda? Would someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda? Motion from Mr. Welch. Second from Mr. Peterson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. As part of that approval on the consent, we approved on the consent the board meeting minutes from May 19th, 2014 and May 23rd, 2014. We approved board policy revisions for second reading. The following are policies that are for deletion. 1.101, School Board Powers and Duties. 1.500, Board Community Relations. 1.809, School Bookstores. 1.810, Private School Relations. 3.2071, Building Committees. 5.100, Personnel Goals. And 5.502, Staff Protection. Board Policy 6.701, Student Solicitations and Fundraising, is approved on second reading. We approved the field trip fee request, the Grace Park Baptist Church at Longview Elementary School, 2013 LEA Compliance Report, and the hiring rate for teachers, principals, and assistant principals, curriculum specialists, supplements, and classified employees for 2014-15. The next item on the agenda is public comment. We do not have anyone this evening who has signed up to address the board, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the superintendent's report. Dr. Looney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board members, good to see you this evening. I have a couple of items to report to just bring you up to speed about district happenings. We have logged more than 13,000 hours of professional development credit since school dismissed. So our teachers, if you go by Franklin High School or our Professional Development Learning Center, you'll probably see the parking lot being full of educators from Williamson County engaged in ongoing learning activities. Most of them are not at the beach, but they're at work. Our TVOS data has been returned from the state. That data will be embargoed until the very last part of July or early August. I will just say that I think once again you'll be proud of the teachers' work and your leadership. So I look forward to disclosing that information. And then finally, this is also academic achievement data, but it is not something that gets generally reported. As you know, we test our 11th grade cohorts each year on the ACT. And the 11th grade ACT is the baseline data that we use to set goals for the following year. Your goal being an average ACT of 24. I'm proud to report to you tonight that the 11th grade cohort, this rising senior class now, has the highest ACT composite score in the district's history. And so I'm very proud of that, and that is a 23.2 base score. So they can only go up from there. Highest score ever recorded in the district's history. So thank you for your leadership and for your focus on making academics important in Williamson County. That completes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Looney. Ms. Birdsong, do you have some student or staff spotlights this evening? Board members, we are celebrating students and staff this evening. We are going to start with spring sports. We had several state championships in athletics, and we'll start with Franklin High School. Franklin High earned the title of the 2014 TSSAA State Soccer Champion. Team members are Austin Baker, Chance Culbreth, Daniel Enciso, Evan Forrest, Alistair Berger, Jimmy Wester, Drew Collins, Brad Ross, Riley Meese, Jan Kim, Sergio Enciso, Matt Brady, Austin Wimberly, Connor Brady, Kyle Cooper, Brian Schrader, JT Mannion, Eli Hiskey, Parker Lamb, John Fly, Mitchell Hill, Brady Fulton, and Elijah Ridley. Their coach is Mike Burgoyne, assistant coach Jack Terrio. In tennis, the Ravenwood girls tennis team earned the title of state champions. Katie Fitt, Iris Howe, Kelly Raines, Vicky Go, Callie Roth, Rachel Hudson, Annie Cobb, Emily Wiseman, Angel Esvertham, Natalie Jones, Julie Wasick, and Michelle Zhu. Their coach is Robbie McCammon. And Stephen Carl, also from Ravenwood High School, won the boys' single tennis state championship. His coach is Robbie McCammon. Brentwood High School's Jack Mayer won state champion in the shot put. His coaches are Ronnie Sigenthaler and Steve Wade. Also from Brentwood High School in track, state champion boys 4x800 relay team, Aaron Thomas, Ryan Lee, Taylor Caldwell, and Gavin Hasty. Again, Ronnie Sigenthaler is their coach. Also, the girls team from Brentwood High School brought home a state championship trophy in the 4x800 relay. Rosie Lobelson, Maddie Riddle, Lacey Duval, and Haley Hendry. Their coaches, Ronnie Sigenthaler and Laura Whitaker. Independence High's Lizzie Kroger won a state championship in track in the 1600 meter run. Her coach is Molly Haig. And Page High School had a state champion in pole vault, Peter Leichner, and his coach is Peter Wade. And also in pole vault, Ravenwood High School, Justin Lankes, his coach is Peter Mueller. As for staff spotlights, this is Christy Neuroth from Ravenwood High School. She has been named the Distinguished Teacher Award, or has received the Distinguished Teacher Award from the National Council for Geographic Education. And our own Corey Mason has been named the President-elect of the Tennessee Association of School Communicators. Congratulations to Corey. And board members, I just learned late this afternoon that your very own communications department has received 3 national awards, and we're quite excited about them.
We received a Golden Achievement Award from the National School Public Relations Association, and that was for producing the video series, A Split-Second Decision Can Last a Lifetime, and that was in cooperation with the Franklin Police Department and Charlie Warner, the District Attorney's Office, District Attorney Kim Helper and her group, and the Williamson County Sheriff's Department. It was a wonderful team effort. We also won a Golden Achievement Award for the parenting playbook, and if you recall, that was a partnership project with WCS Ambassador Freddie Scott II, who was an ambassador in the class, our first class of 2013. So we're really excited about that. But I have to tell you that I'm so excited about this Golden Achievement Award honoring Bobby Blevins and our WCS Week in Review that we just started this school year. And I have to say thank you to our high school media teachers and all of our school media contacts who provide the footage to us so that we can produce that and let our stakeholders know what's going on in our schools every week. Congratulations to all of our students and staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Birdsong. The next item on the agenda is the board chairman's report. We have several staff and principals in the audience. If you would stand and let us welcome you. Thank you very much for being here. It is summer. We appreciate your presence and support. Tonight, we're going to say goodbye to somebody. Ms. Dr. Donna Wright. This is her last official meeting with our board. And so we want to tell you how much we've enjoyed working with you and wish you the very best as you begin your new responsibilities as the superintendent of Wilson County Schools. It's been our pleasure. And board members, we received notice last week about a resolution that the County Commission presented to us last week, and several of you were able to join us last Monday night when we received this, and I thought maybe this might be the appropriate time to do it again, because this is such a nice recognition that we received from Commissioner Bethard, Chairman Jack Walton, and from Mayor Rogers Anderson. So if you'll indulge me for just a moment, I'd like to read this proclamation recognizing excellence in the Williamson County school system. Whereas Williamson County, Tennessee continues to experience tremendous growth, largely as a result of the excellent performance of its schools, and whereas Williamson County Schools, 34,449 students excel in academic achievement and growth measures at the elementary, middle, and high school levels, including TCAP, ACT, advanced placement, and other measures, with examples of success that include the following. Williamson County School students ranked first in the state in 2013 TCAP scores, earning all A's in both achievement and growth. 26 Williamson County schools were named the 2013 Reward Schools by the Tennessee Department of Education for being among the top 5% of schools in the state in annual academic growth and/or achievement. 68 Williamson County School students were named National Merit Finalists in the past 2 years. In a state where all students must take the ACT as a graduation requirement, Williamson County students set a new district record by averaging a composite ACT score of 23.4 in 2013, outscoring the state and national average of 19.5 and 20.9 respectively. Data for 2014 projects another increase in ACT scores, including 7 students who have already earned a perfect 36 composite score. The Williamson County School class of 2014 was offered a total of $123 million in scholarships and accepted over $58 million. And whereas Williamson County Schools has achieved these top results while ranking in the most recent TEA reports as 74th in the per pupil expenditures among Tennessee's 136 public school districts, whereas most recently data from schooldigger.com, an independent media site reporting information on more than 136,000 schools from every state in the U.S., establishes that Williamson County Schools is the #1 ranked public school district in the nation, with more than 20,000 students based on math and English scores across all grades. And now therefore be it resolved that the Williamson County Board of Commissioners, meeting in the regular session this 9th day of June 2014, hereby publicly acknowledges and applauds the most recent achievement of Williamson County Schools as being the #1 school district in the United States with more than 20,000 students. And be it further resolved that all citizens are encouraged to join us in recognizing this level of excellence achieved collectively by the students with support of parents, faculty, and administration. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the great seal of the County of Williamson to be affixed at Franklin this 9th day of June 2014. And again, it's signed by Commissioner Bethard, Chairman Walton, and Mayor Anderson. What an awesome accomplishment. And I think on behalf of the board, I think it would just be remiss if I did not congratulate everyone who played a part in this, and thank you for your hard work and your dedication, because it takes all of us. And as I told the county commissioner the other night, the puzzle pieces have all come together, and we've got an awesome team. And I want to thank everyone for doing this. So thank you so much. That concludes my report for this evening, so we will move on.
Madam Chair, if I could just have a moment
Yes,
of
sir.
privilege. Board members, I think this is a very appropriate time to thank you for your focus and your leadership. As your CEO, I see the incredible heavy lift that everybody in the district makes on a regular basis. And the reality of it is, Williamson County is a very special place, but in part it's a special place because we have a school board that's committed to doing what's right for boys and girls. And so for that, I am truly thankful and humbled to be part of this district and to serve you.
Thank you, Dr. Looney. We appreciate your leadership as well. Next item on the agenda is item 3A. This is new business. It's number 1. It's on page 77. This is board policy for deletion 1.0001, school board members. Dr. Looney,
Madam Chair, I recommend deletion of this policy.
would someone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Motion for Mr. Hullett.
Second.
Second for Mr. McLaughlin. Is there any discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is 3A2, 1.200, officers' method of elections. This is deletion. It's on page 79. Dr. Looney,
Madam Chair, board members, I recommend that you delete this policy as well.
someone like to make a motion? Motion for Mr. Gregory. Second for Ms. Vogt. Is there any discussion? I see none. Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is 3A3, 1.600, policy development. This information is on page 81. Dr. Looney,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board members, this is the first reading of the proposed policy change. I do recommend approval upon this first reading.
someone like to make a motion? Motion for Ms. Mills.
Second.
Second for Mr. Hullett. Is there any discussion? I see none. Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is 3A4, 2.2001, staff involvement. This is for deletion. Dr. Looney,
Recommend deletion.
someone like to make a motion? Motion for Ms. Hammond. Second for Mr. Peterson. Is there any discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is 3A5. This information is on page 85. It's 2.2002, public involvement. This is a deletion. Dr. Looney.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. I want to make sure that the public understands that this does in no way inhibits public involvement. We have another means to accommodate that same purpose. I do recommend deletion.
Someone like to make a motion? Motion for Mr. Hullett. Second for Mr. Wimberly. Is there any discussion? See none, are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is 3A6. It's on page 87. It's 2.2003, local government involvement. This is a deletion. Dr. Looney.
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. This is a requirement and is duplicative to have it in policy, just as the policy that you just deleted. I recommend deletion.
Someone like to make a motion? Move to approve. Motion for Ms. Hammond. Second for Mr. Peterson. Is there any discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is on page 89. It's 3A7. It's 2.2004, student involvement. This is a deletion. Dr. Looney.
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. For the same purposes as stated previously, I recommend deletion of this policy.
Someone like to make a motion? Motion for Mr. Gregory. Second for Mr. McLaughlin. Is there any discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is 3A8 on page 91. It's 2.2005, publication of recommendations. This is a deletion. Dr. Looney.
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. For the same purpose as previously stated, I recommend deletion of this policy. We do provide a public document of our budget.
Someone like to make a motion? Motion for Ms. Vogt. Second for Mr. Welch. Is there any discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is 3B1. This information is on page 95. It's the Central Cafeteria Fund. Dr. Looney.
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. It's that time of year where we're closing the year out and we have to make adjustments to budgets, and this reflects that for the Central Cafeteria Fund. Mrs. Holman is here to answer any questions you may have. I do recommend approval.
Someone like to make a motion? Motion for Mr. Wimberly. Second for Mr. Welch. Is there any discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is 3C. 1, it's on page 97. It's the Education Capital Projects, the Centennial High School baseball field. Dr. Looney?
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. A number of months ago, there was a storm that came through, and as you know, it lifted off and damaged the dugouts and the baseball field complex at Centennial High School. I'd like to particularly thank all those board members that represent Centennial for coming together with the community to find a solution that works best for them and upgrades that facility so it's eligible to play under in accordance with TSSAA standards. I do recommend your approval of this expenditure for $180,000.
Someone like to make a motion? Motion from Ms. Vogt, second from Mr. Welch. Is there any discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is 3C2. This is the end-of-year general purpose school fund. These are the new pages, page 98A. Dr. Looney?
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. As we described to you in the work session, as we begin to close the year out, there are several transfers that need to take place. The documents that Mrs. Holman has provided you give you the appropriate description of those transfers. I do recommend approval of those transfers as submitted.
Someone like to make a motion?
Vote to approve.
Motion for Mr. Wimberly,
Second.
second for Ms. Hammond. Is there any discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is 3C3. This is the end of the year Central Cafeteria Fund. The information is on new page 98B. Dr. Looney?
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. I recommend approval as submitted.
Someone like to make a motion? Motion for Mr. Hullett. Second for Mr. Peterson. Is there any discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is 3C4 on page 98C, End of Year Extended School Program Fund. Dr. Looney?
Madam Chair and board members, as you know, this is a self-sustaining fund, but at the same time, we have to make the appropriate line item adjustments and transfers to close the year out appropriately. I do recommend approval.
Someone like to make a motion? Motion from Mr. McLaughlin.
Second.
Second from Mr. Wimberly. Is there any discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is 3D. This is your 2014-15 budget amendments. The first one is on page 101. It's the Central Cafeteria Fund, 2% raise. Dr. Looney?
Madam Chair and board members, I could not be more proud than to present to you a resolution, the first resolution for the new year, to appropriate a small salary increase for our employees. Thank you, thank you, thank you on behalf of all of our employees for being courageous and making this happen. I do recommend approval of this 2% raise budget adjustment for the Central Cafeteria Fund.
Would someone like to make a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion from Mr. Wimberly, second from Mr. Welch. Is there any discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is 3D2. This is on page 103. It's the Extended School Fund, 2% raise. Dr. Looney?
Ditto, but this is for extended school care.
Someone like to make a motion? So moved. Motion from Mr. Peterson.
Second.
Second from Mr. Hullett. Is there any discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is 3D3 on page 105. Is the General Purpose School Fund 2% raise. Dr. Looney?
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. This is the allocation for our professional educators, and it will reflect their 2% raise. I do recommend your approval.
Would someone like to make a motion? Motion for Ms. Vogt.
Second.
Second for Mr. McLaughlin. Is there any discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is 3D4 on page 110. It's the intent to fund capital needs. Dr. Looney?
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. As you're aware, the capital request that we submitted to the County Commission was asked to be reduced to $4 million. We do recommend approval of this $4 million. I want to make clear it does not represent all the needs that we have in the district, but this is the figure that we were given to operate with. So I do recommend your approval, but I want to emphasize that there are needs that remain unmet.
Would someone like to make a motion? Motion for Mr. Hullett.
Second.
Second for Ms. Hammond. Is there any discussion? Mr. Wimberly?
Dr. Looney, what are some of the most significant needs that are being unmet?
Thank you, Mr. Wimberly. If you look at page 111, you will see that there is a line that's actually written in pen, and so it's between items 13 and 14. All of the items from 15 down are items that we will not be able to take care of this year, which includes video surveillance equipment at the middle schools, paging, intercom, and telephone systems at several of our elementary schools, wireless internet expansion at several of our schools, uninterruptible power management items. And then if you turn to page 112, you'll see a similar line, the items below that line to include replacing the bathroom partitions at Page High School, replacing carpet at various schools, doors and hardware, plumbing hardware, replacing a boiler at Page Middle School, renovation of a room, resurfacing tennis courts, replacing hand washing sinks, and replacing lockers, etc. at various schools.
So if I may, what's the plan for mitigating these shortages?
We're going to kick the can down the road a little bit further, and we'll be coming back to the County Commission again to try to meet these needs. Each year we go through this process, and each year the list gets longer of items that we need to maintain. So the carpet will be sold and old, but we'll live with it until we can afford it.
Thank you.
Mr. McLaughlin?
I guess I asked the same question, you know, that the second part that Rick asked is some of these things, such as replacing a boiler, you don't want the boiler to go out in the season in which you need it. So that, you know, I don't know what kind of shape it's in, but it doesn't make much sense that some of these are pushed out so that they can cause. Do you feel comfortable that some of these things are not going to come back to bite us as the season goes on?
No, sir, I don't feel comfortable with that at all, but I feel absolutely convicted that I'll come back to you and to the county commission with a related funding request should something go awry and break down in the middle of the fiscal year.
It seems like, I mean, I trust your judgment, but it just seems like to me that some of these that have a critical path there should go ahead and be added to the budget.
Well, I would agree with you, but we only have $4 million to operate within.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak before we vote? Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is item 3E. This is the approval to contract for construction of Nolensville High School. The information is on page 113. Dr. Looney?
Well, I guess the irony of this story is we're struggling to maintain the buildings, but we have to build new ones because of our growth. And so the items on page 113 represent that need to begin the construction for Nolensville High School, Mill Creek Middle, and Mill Creek Elementary School campuses. We expect to come back to you with another funding resolution of about $40 million. We have laid out a proposal for a total purchase price of $37,989,000 with the add alternates that are identified on page 113. I do recommend approval.
Someone like to make a motion?
Motion
Motion.
to approve the request for the add alternates 1, 3, 4, and 5 as the bottom of the page that Dr. Moon gave us.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Anderson. It's the information
Right.
that's at the bottom of
You said all of them, I thought.
Yes, ma'am.
1, 3, 4, and 5.
I thought you said.
Right, the base and the add alternates, yes.
I'm sorry,
Right.
I can't hear.
the request is for, the request on this document is the information that's contained at the bottom. It's the add alternates for 1, 3, 4, and 5 for a total contract cost of $37,989,000.
His microphone was not.
That does not include the field house, which is item number 2. Recommending that you approve the construction of Nolensville High School to include add alternate 1, 3, 4, and 5.
Okay, so we have the motion from Mr. Anderson. And a second from Mr. Mesra. Mr. Hullett?
Just for the sake of clarity, we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 at the top with the add alternates for 1, 3, 4, and 5. Is that what we are?
I'm asking you to approve the base bid of $37,137. In addition, add alternate 1, 3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
That would leave out the field house.
Okay.
Is there any further? Mr. Wimberly?
Dr. Looney, we had a rather compelling presentation at the work session on artificial turf, which could you kind of just one more time review for us why staff believes that artificial turf would be a prudent way for us to proceed for this new school, since we obviously don't have artificial turf anywhere else?
Yes, sir. And I may ask Jason to chime in as well. We've been talking about adding artificial turf to fields for years now, one of the primary drivers of the conversation at Nolensville is the amount of land that we acquired. As you know, there are 3 campuses going on that one parcel of land, and we typically place 8 fields, but we only have space for 6. So we have a number of fields challenge that we want to overcome. Secondly, there is a good bit of research now that supports the notion that artificial turf is actually safer, that fewer injuries occur for athletes on those type of playing surfaces. And then finally, once you get the insulation done, we avoid the ongoing maintenance cost of watering, fertilizing, and cutting the fields with manpower hours. And essentially what we've been told and the research that we've been given is the maintenance upkeep on those fields is minimal moving forward. There is a life cycle that's associated with those fields, but in looking at the longevity of traditional turf fields, the life cycle is not dissimilar to what we would expect to see on a traditional turf field.
If I may ask, how long is that life cycle? And also, with artificial turf, will other activities be possible on the turf rather than Friday night football?
Well, they'll be required. So the question, to answer your first question is, the turf contractor that we're interested in doing business with has an 8-year warranty on the field itself. The underlayment, the stuff that's beneath the surfaces, I believe a lifetime warranty or 20 years, or Kevin?
It's a combined warranty of both the turf and the underlayment.
Okay.
Over a period of time, there may have to be some grooming of the infill material, and then at the time that you would replace the artificial turf, the fiber itself, that would be the time that you regrade the subgrade material in the drainage field.
And the replacement cost of the artificial turf is about half of the original cost. The answer to your second question is, one of the wonderful things in my mind about artificial turf is it will be a shared field. So the middle school and the high school will practice and play football on the same field. The band will be able to practice on the field. The JROTC, if they have one, lacrosse will play on the field and could practice on the field. Soccer could play and practice on the field. So as you know, traditional high school football fields and the stadiums that are associated with them are typically only used 8 times a year when there's a home game. And the rest of the time, nobody's allowed on the field because you'll mess up the grass. Well, the good part about this is you can't mess the grass up. So the more people on the field, actually the better for the field. So that will get a lot of additional use.
I'm sorry, but one more question, if I may.
Yes, sir.
How do we open a new school without a field house?
That's a good question. We have not traditionally built field houses at any of our schools. Usually booster clubs and other organizations end up contributing and helping build those. What we were trying to do at this school was to take all of the, as many of the sports out of the regular building, as an example, the weight room, the lockers, and put them out near the field so it was a separate entity, and then reutilize or repurpose that square footage inside the main building. But since we didn't feel like we could afford the additional cost of the field house, we'll just have those items in the schools like we do the rest of our schools.
And if I may add a little
Please
bit,
do.
if I may add a little bit to that, to your most recent question about field houses, our newer high school constructions have included locker rooms that were larger than our older high school buildings to accommodate some of the equivalencies of a field house need. So we would find some of our older school buildings with field houses behind or next to the buildings because those locker rooms just simply didn't exist in the old buildings. So we balanced the price by including the request for a field house as an ad alternate, and simply found that we cannot afford it based on our budget.
So the new school will have the larger locker rooms?
That's correct.
It will.
And that is actually listed as ad alternate 1, the locker room. Also, Mr. Wembley, to give you a little bit more detail, since Dr. Looney invited me to, and I can't resist talking.
I know.
When we originally planned the Nolensville area schools, our capital plan included a campus to serve elementary and high school. We found through the process of this that we could save about $10 million, including a joint elementary middle building serving both grades, and we're adding a principal to each. And so with that $10 million savings, we were, however, on a lot of land that reduced our capacity for the traditional rectangular fields by 1, which meant that when you combine the middle and high school field uses, we simply did not have enough fields. So that was the driver, at least for me in my discussions with our, with Kevin and our facilities work. We needed that capacity to have more field usage on that campus that's serving K through 12.
Thank you. Sounds good. No more questions from me for now.
Mr. Anderson?
Since we've had a history of coming back later and adding field houses where needed, the plan of the land layout will leave the space for that, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and Mr. Fortney's nodding his head. He could give you some detail if you're looking for that.
We have designed a field house for that site. It would be located at the south end of the planned football stadium. So similar to what we did at Summit High School, we've left a parcel of land to the west of the football field for a future field house if it is determined we can afford it.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak before we vote? And we are voting to approve the contract for construction of Nolensville High School with the add alternates of 1, 3, 4, and 5 for a total contract cost of $37,989,000. Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Next item is 3F. This is the evaluation of the 2013-14 school board goals. This is the new page that you had at your place this evening with the actual goals that we adopted last year. The information, the evidence on page 116 did not change. It's the correct information. And I'd like to read the goals and the evidence that we have for our school board goals. Before we move forward, we established a goal. The board would begin building relationships with school boards bordering Williamson County to address matters of common interest. In January 2014, Superintendent Dr. Mike Looney and Board Chair Pat Anderson began meeting monthly with superintendents and board chairs from the 9 school districts bordering Williamson County. Representatives from the Cheatham, Davidson, Dixon, Hickman, Marshall, Maury, Rutherford, Murfreesboro City, and Franklin Special School Districts met monthly from January to May 2014 to discuss matters of common interest, which included best practices, board policies, legislative action items, and the reporting of test data. Goal 2, the board will be informed of legislative committee meetings affecting education. In January 2014, the newly formed Williamson County School Board Legislative Committee began attending Tennessee Legislative Committee meetings. Committee members included Sherry Hammond, Robert Hullett, and Timothy McLaughlin. Committee Chair Sherry Hammond provided regular legislative updates to the board. Goal 3, the board will establish an appropriate relationship with the Tennessee State School Board. To date, the board has not yet established an effective relationship with the Tennessee State School Board at this time. Goal 4, the board will develop and execute a legislative action plan to promote the interest of Williamson County schools for the 2014 legislative session. The board developed and approved 7 resolutions in February to promote the interest of Williamson County schools for the 2014 legislative session. Would someone like to make a motion to approve our evaluation? Motion from Mr. McLaughlin. Second from Mr. Gregory. And I think additionally, for the purpose of the public to know that the first two goals and the last goal we did meet, and the third goal we did not meet. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Welch?
On goal number 3, I'm sort of caught by the language. The goal was to establish an appropriate relationship, whereas the description is an effective relationship. I think it's somewhat subjective what an appropriate relationship is, in the sense that we did work with TSBA to provide board member training. I think it comes down to a question of membership, and that's a decision that we have yet to make. So I'm a little bit stuck on the language here for the third one.
On the language of the goal or the language of the evidence?
On the language of the evidence. Thank you.
Okay. I think it would be appropriate to say that the goal there is with the Tennessee State School Board, not with the TSBA.
Fair point. Thank you.
Mr. Wimberly?
I was wondering the same thing. So.
Okay. That goal was with the State Board of Education, not with the TSBA, with the Tennessee School Board Association. It's with the State School Board. Is there any further discussion? Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. The next item is item 3G. This information is on page 73. It's also in the information that was passed out just prior to the board meeting. It's additions to the high school course list for 2014-15. Dr. Looney?
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. I just want to orient you to the documents that you've received from Mr. Gaddis's department prior to your decision on how to proceed. I'll go first to the document that's entitled Courses for Units of High School Credit 2014-15. It is a portrait style document. If you turn to page number 4, in the top third, you'll see it says multi-age instrumental music, band/orchestra 6 through 12. We're proposing to add, you've already approved that, we're proposing to add the row just beneath it, which has the same title with the exception of honors at the end of it. And then again, about halfway through that page, you see multi-age vocal music, chorus and choir, 8 through 12. And then the one below that is one that we're proposing that you add, which is the honors designation. Those are standalone courses, so they're not one and the same. They're not taught at the same time by the same instructor with mixed kids. They would be in separate courses. I also, at the work session, we had quite a bit of debate, so I want to call your attention to page number 7 of that document, and I just want to highlight some of the other courses that we did not discuss that are currently identified as honors courses, but I think are important to the conversation. So if you go to the fifth item down, medical therapeutics is an honors course. The one below that, nursing education, is an honors level course. Culinary arts 3 is honors. Under information technology, cabling and internet working is an honors designation. Web Page Design 3, E-commerce has an honors designation. Criminal Justice 3 has an honors designation. Advertising and Public Relations has an honors designation. And then Entrepreneurship has an honors designation. And then on the last page, maybe that is the last page. Maybe I'm confused here. Well, I'm looking for the visual arts, and it's on page 4, I'm sorry. Under visual arts on page 4, you can see that there is a visual arts 3, 2D and 3D both have honors designations. So I point those out to make the point, or to try to make the point, that we do have a number of courses outside of the traditional 4 core areas that have honors designations. And then I want to call your attention to, these are examples. These are not the complete course of study or scope and sequence guides, because they're large documents. So if you turn to either one of the 2 landscape documents that you have, one of them says Vocal Music Quarter 2, Revised 2014. The other one says Instrumental Music. If you flip to the last page or pages of these scope and sequence guides, you will note, and I'm going to look at the vocal music one. You'll see that at the end on the vocal music, it starts on page 4 of 5. There is an honors addendum. And so this is how all of our honors courses appear in the scope and sequence guide. It delineates what the additional requirements are for this course work to be designated as an honors course. So the students that are in vocal would have the additional criteria that they would have to meet in the vocal music honors course. The same would be true of instrumental music. That is a 7-page document, and it begins on page 6 of 7. Having said that, Mr. Gaddis has taken the time to contact all of the high schools to get clarification and confirmation about what the high school's intent is as relates to this potential course offering for the 2014-15 school year. And with your permission, I'm going to ask for Tim to recap what the high school principals indicate their intent is as it relates to offering these honors courses. Tim?
Yes, 3 of the high schools currently plan courses that would be those standalone courses that would be designated as honors. Franklin High School is one of those, Ravenwood, and then also Brentwood. In those cases, they're looking at wind ensemble for the instrumental music, and they're looking at their top vocal groups in the vocal music. Ravenwood indicated that they had 1 course, 1 class that would constitute a course. Brentwood has more than that. They have 3 separate courses that are meeting separately, and students are registered for those. And then at Franklin, we have wind ensemble and vocal as well. So those would be the 3 schools. I did contact the other schools. Many of those schools do have the visual arts honors courses, but they don't have anything in performance as of now, and don't have it planned for the fall at this point.
With that being said, I'd like to make a recommendation that the board approve these. I know there's a number of questions. Do you want me to try to answer that one while you've got it?
I think it might be helpful if
Okay.
we answer this question just for the point of clarification. Board members, as you know, on page 73, it's referred to as 11th and 12th grade honors band and 11th and 12th grade honors choir. But on the course list that we're being asked to approve this evening, it addresses it as grades 6 through 12 in the band orchestra and grades 8 through 12 in the vocal music. So Dr. Linney, would you like to, or Mr. Gaddis?
I'll be glad to take that. The item, the course for units of high school credit, those course titles come from the State Department of Education, so that's a broader classification from what we're offering. We will only be offering that to students that are in their 3rd year or 4th year of vocal or instrumental music, and that by default makes them 11th or 12th graders. So what you would be approving for the course itself comes from the state course description. That's why there's a disparity there.
Thank you. Would someone like to make a motion? Motion for Mr. Hullett.
Second.
Second for Mr. Wimberly. Is there any discussion? Ms. Mills?
Well, I think I made the points that I wanted to make. I can't support this tonight. It's not that I don't want to support or look at it. I feel like this has come to the board in a very quick way. I think there's a philosophical discussion that the board needs to have in regard to related arts being honors classes and the impact that that has from a financial standpoint with teachers, what impact that has on core curriculum classes, and how we feel about that in regards to the related arts, not just performance arts, chorus and band. It could also apply to guitar, piano, JROTC. And so I feel like, from my perspective, I don't have enough information to be comfortable with going down the slope until the board has had the philosophical conversation. So I can't support it tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Vogt?
Dr. Looney, I'd like a little clarification, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
When it comes to the students that signed up with the intent to take the wind ensemble or the other courses, did they have an understanding when they signed up for the course that it would be an honors course?
Based on the conversations that Mr. Gaddis had today with principals, the answer is no.
Okay, so
They
don't.
signed up thinking that they were getting standard class credit.
Okay, so they don't have a current expectation nor understanding. They signed up for those courses for the pure love of pursuing music at that particular level. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And when they signed up for that, were they asked to demonstrate a particular amount of ability or understanding of music?
I wasn't there. I can tell you what's reported to me, and the answer to that is yes.
Okay. The concern that I have is that although I think that this will go a long way in supporting our united goal of being a district recognized nationally for academics, the arts, and athletics, I have some concern about this, and my concern has to do with doing this in the middle of in the summertime, after the courses have been set. And also, I think there might be some value in waiting and allowing all the other band directors and choir directors to become familiar with this opportunity and to offer that with equity across all of the schools. Because maybe if there was a move on our part to expand those offerings, it would be done in other schools beyond the Franklin High School, Ravenwood, and I think Brentwood. So I think there's a value in going ahead and waiting for the opportunity and a little bit more vetting of exactly what it looks like. I know at Centennial that they had previously had opportunities for additional classes that were of a higher caliber. They just received a new band instructor, and that band instructor might take this opportunity. But I just wonder how equitable we're being across the board with this. So that's what is giving me pause at this time.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. Hammond?
Yes, thank you. I have just a couple questions. First of all, to piggyback on that, can Mr. Gaddis speak to that, why the other high schools are not offering it right now? does it really have to do with the honors or non-honors designation, or just not students interested in a wind ensemble and that sort of thing?
Well, I'll start, and then I'll let Tim chime in, and I know Melissa Dufershoe is here as well, so she might be able to answer questions for the board as well. I think it's a misinterpretation to think that this is a conversation that has just started. Mr. Gaddis has reported to me that his department was under the impression that those honors courses had been added to the course request list that you approved this last spring. Melissa Dufershoe has been working with the band and choral instructors towards that end. As you know, bands and choirs are much like athletic teams in that they have cycles where they peak and cycles where they're rebuilding. And my understanding is that some of those programs are in a cycle where they have peaked and are starting the rebuilding process and don't have the maturation level of student to warrant a course of this intensity. Not saying that they won't, they just don't right now. You know, if your star quarterback leaves, you've got to build a new one, and it might take a year or two. And so, you know, I'm told that bands and choirs are very similar to that. But my understanding is that the band directors and choral directors have been involved in this conversation moving down the road. And you know, Tim's response, I'll let Tim speak for himself, but his response the other night was, you know, I didn't know that this was a landmine. You know, we just thought we were doing business as usual. So, Tim, I'll let you add any points that you'd like to make.
Well, the schools that haven't, that are not doing this or have not indicated a desire to do this, it has to do with the size of their programs. It takes a certain size of program in order to be able to pull out enough students to have a standalone class. And as we discussed the other day, or the other evening, you know, there are some districts that get around that by having a class within a class for those students who are at that level. But we're not doing that.
And in fairness, I need to interject. We had some of those schools that requested to participate, but they wanted to have a blended classroom, and I would not support that effort. If we're going to have the class, in my view, if we're going to do it, we need to do it right.
So it's a matter of numbers.
If I may, just
Yes,
my
ma'am.
two other ones, thank you, related questions. So you've already answered it, but again, just for clarification, is the understanding then that maybe just an oversight that these weren't included when we approved the list earlier? That these two, let me ask two of them, and I think they're related. One is that, and my other question is, in the class that the students did sign on for, the wind ensemble class, for example, is this the same work that they would be doing, or is the description that we would be approving tonight, this class, does that have additional requirements to it?
I'll answer the last part first, and then I'm going to punt to Tim on the first question. The students signed up for the class, registered for the class, understanding it was a standard class. Meanwhile, Mr. Gaddis's department, with Melissa's leadership, as with all subject areas, has been revising and upgrading the scope and sequence guides to reflect an honors addendum. So if the class was to be offered in its standard form, it would be this exact scope and sequence minus the honors addendum. If you authorize the honors version of the class, and there may be a standard version and there may be an honors version, depending on what offerings are at schools based on demand. If there was an honors version of the class, then it would be the standard scope and sequence material in addition to the honors addendum, if that makes sense. As it relates to whether it was an oversight, I don't want to give it to you secondhand, so I'll let Mr. Gaddis address that.
This is, and I certainly want to take the responsibility for this. When this course list was created, I went over it many times, you know, before this was presented to you, and I simply missed it. I missed that we didn't have that honors designation in there. Now, we didn't know yet at that time that that's what we wanted to do. We were still, Melissa was still, we were still in the process of working through that with our our directors, both choral and vocal, vocal and instrumental. But we thought that that's what we would want to do. They've been asking for that for for 3 years now, and so we wanted to put that in there. And I simply overlooked the fact that it wasn't in there in case we needed it.
May I do one more follow-up?
Yes, ma'am.
So if this is approved tonight, the students that have already signed up for one of these classes, I'll just stick again with wind ensemble to talk about one, that have already signed up for it, would there now be a choice for them? Let's say there's, since Ravenwood was one, let's say there's Ravenwood, the kids have already signed up for the wind ensemble. Would they now have a choice whether they're going to do the honors or not? And is there a possibility that if only some of those children want to do the honors and some don't, we could end up not having either course because there's not enough students?
Well, they've already signed up. That's a great question.
Right.
They've already signed up
For the
for the
basic.
standard version.
Right.
So the potential is there that I hope, if we did this, some students would say, you know what, I want more rigorous coursework. I want a challenge. I want to do above and beyond. They would then in turn switch from the standard course to the honors course. If there are enough students to do that, then there would be a separate section of that wind ensemble that's an honors section and a standard section. If there's not enough to make the honors section, then there would only be the standard section.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hullett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things that I would just say, and I talked about it a little bit on Thursday, is where the notes hit the staff, so to speak. The rigor is in what we're reading tonight, but it's always been there. It was there 20-something years ago when I was a sophomore in wind ensemble, earning standard credit rather than honors credit. The choral directors and the band directors are going to push and push and push to get to the criteria that you see, whether it's honors or not. One of the things that we're doing, this as a former music student, a former music teacher, we're giving them credit for what they're actually earning. And when it comes to whether it's offered here and there and equity and that type of thing, what it comes down to is if you wanted to have a strings ensemble, but you have no one in the school who plays strings, you can't offer it. Excuse me, if you wanted to have jazz band, but you didn't have the right instrumentation, you could not offer jazz band because the class wouldn't fill. But when you have a robust music program, especially when you're talking about with a chorus program that's flourishing, and you want to create performance ensembles, show choirs, madrigals, things like that, or if you want to create an ensemble, a wind ensemble per se, or a smaller choir, wind choir, those types of things you can when your program is robust. And so this is giving the opportunity to those schools that are there, and it's a great stepping stone for the rest of the programs to say, hey, this is what we can achieve and this is how we can move forward. And it's not just for music, it's for the other courses that we'll be evaluating from weeks and months and years to come, but it's a good starting point for our schools and for our music programs to jump off of.
Thank you. Mr. Wimberly?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the concerns that Mrs. Mills and Mrs. Vogt have expressed, and I acknowledge that this doesn't appear to be our most graceful execution of something, but it sounds like it was an oversight. And the truth is, we just don't have that many oversights here. So I have a high level of confidence that our staff and our teachers can execute this sufficient to justify the name of honors. And I truly believe that if we're going to have national excellence in academics, arts, and athletics, not only should we, but we must provide more strenuous programs for the more advanced students in the arts. And I would like to see it in athletics as well. In fact, I would encourage us to look for more opportunities for advanced honors classes in athletics and the arts. So I'm supportive of this, and I think I can live with the oversight.
And I would like to volunteer to offer a advanced skydiving class.
I may be changing my opinion of the class and of you, Dr. Looney.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you. I just wanted you to maybe talk about, because a lot of those courses that you discussed on this list, in the special notes, it says it's the last year for honors. And I know that there's been, a lot of discussion about moving away from honors courses And so I know this is a big discussion point at many of the schools with regards to them losing honors classes. I would just hate for us to do this and then this come back to us and say it would be the last year's. I just want some clarification on why
That's a great
we're
question.
losing those classes.
It's a great question. Thank you for asking the question. Career Tech is going through some revamping, so some of the classes are just changing. The state has gone through renaissance, if you want to call it that, and changing its approach to career technical education classes. So some of them will appear in different forms. And then secondly, I will say this. Since the time that I have been here, I have been insistent that if we designate something as an honors class, it has the rigor that we feel comfortable with as an organization calling it an honors class. And to be frank with you, that hasn't always been true. And so what we are saying, and that's why you see it reflected in the scope and sequence guys now, is we have concretely articulated this is the difference between a standards class and an honors class. And what we've communicated to our career tech folks, and as you know, we have a new career tech director that starts July 1, and he and I have already had this conversation, is before we designate it as an honors class, we're going to have to differentiate what is it that makes this class different moving forward. And then the final thing I want to say about that is it's actually a misunderstanding that we're trying to get rid of honors courses. We're not trying to get rid of honors courses. What we're trying to do is making sure that an honors course is an honors course. And then on top of that, we're trying to not be duplicative. As an example, and this is the most practical example I can give you because it's the one that's been played out the most in the district, we offer AP English for 11th graders. And if you can be successful in honors English, third year English, in an honors format, there is a strong, strong likelihood that you could be successful in an AP course. And so in keeping with our movement to make coursework more rigorous, we are trying to reduce the number of English 3 honors courses that we're offering because we have what we believe to be a better course, and that's the AP course, which you can get college credit for. So it's true that we're moving away from some honors courses, but that doesn't mean we're trying to eliminate all honors courses. We're trying to be smart about which honors courses we offer and we don't offer. If there's an AP version of that course, we believe the student's better off in the AP course rather than the honors course. Simply because when, 4 years ago, the only difference between an honors course and a standards course was they completed a portfolio at the end of their experience. Well, to me, that wasn't rigorous enough to justify it being labeled as an honors course. So I hope that answers your question.
Is there anyone else that wishes? Ms. Vogt?
So with that being said, is there a portfolio for what these honor students would be doing in these classes?
No, ma'am, because we're actually moving away from the portfolio model. We don't. Our discussions have led me to believe that we find greater value in work along the school year rather than students putting together a small project at the end of the year demonstrating that they did something above and beyond the standard course.
Right.
So the answer is no portfolio requirement.
No portfolio requirement. And it is only the 11th and 12th grade that will be allowed to take these classes, the honors band or choir.
I want to put a caveat on that. The answer is yes, ma'am, 11th and 12th graders, but from time to time, we get a student in the district that is an exceptional student in some way that is either underage and taking very advanced classes or has been enrolled in some arts program in an institution elsewhere, a magnet art school out of state that comes in that possesses the skill set that where they, in order to be challenged appropriately, would need to be in that course. But generally speaking, yes, ma'am, 11th and 12th graders.
I'm still struggling with this just because of the timing. And oversights happen, and I just don't think that there is damage that will be done because there wasn't an understanding that
those children that signed up for these courses were going to be getting honors. So I see value in going ahead and being prudent enough to wait and fully articulate these courses and have everyone in the district be aware. But I don't philosophically disagree with the avenue that we're pursuing.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hammond?
On the issue of timing, Dr. Looney, do you and your staff feel like you've had enough time to thoroughly vet this and that this is indeed, as you're showing in the scope and sequence, what these honors level 2 classes should be?
Well, once again, the scope and sequence were not developed since school has been out. The scope and sequences were developed prior to dismissal of school. The standing arrangement we have with all of our staff members is any changes that we were going to make for next year, you have them in hand. So the teachers have had the scope and sequence guides with the honors addendum prior to school being dismissed. Is that incorrect?
They actually began their work last September.
Okay.
And I do want to add that all of the performing arts teachers in the district were included in that discussion. So all the schools were aware that this was a possibility.
And Ms. Hammond, I'd like to, just for clarity's sake, it has not been a practice of this body to vet honors coursework. I think the bigger issue, quite frankly, is the issue that Mrs. Mills made, and that is, what is your philosophical position? Do we value arts enough to the point where they deserve honors credit? This board, since I have been here, has never gotten into, is this criteria honors criteria or not? I think, honestly, the broader issue is probably the issue that Mrs. Mills brought out, not discounting what Mrs. Vogt said about timing and whether we should wait another year or not. But we haven't gotten way down in the specifics of what an honors course is and isn't since I've been here.
Right, and I didn't mean that from the aspect of us vetting it. Did you all have the time to do it under your, and that's what I'm hearing that you did, because it's been out there and they've been talking about it since September, and they had this before the year ended.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Welch?
Thank you. Well, first, I think there's been some great discussion on this tonight. Some really fabulous questions being brought up, the explanation of it. It's unfortunate we've got to wash our dirty laundry a little bit publicly like this, but if this is one of the worst things we have, then it's pretty high functioning school district right there. I appreciate Janice's point, and I don't disagree with it as well. I think this did come very, very quickly, and I think you raise a legitimate cautionary flag with that. And I also see the point with Vicky's and the term of equity, in which we try to do for all of our schools. The biggest flag for me was the one about students signing up for kind of a non-honors course and being put into it, but I think you addressed that reasonably, if I understand it, that they would have the option of taking a regular course or the honors and not kind of being shoehorned into it without their knowledge. Is that an accurate understanding of the situation?
Yes, sir, that's accurate.
Okay. Then I guess for me, it kind of comes down to the point of, and I do get the point of the equity, but what is in the best interest of the individual students? And while I would love to see these honors courses at all the schools, and I hope we will have them eventually, I don't see where not providing this to those students that would have that opportunity benefits those that don't. I also see it as a benefit to a lot of our higher achieving students that are not our higher, but our highest achieving students who quite honestly avoid certain classes because they're not getting the honors or the AP credit that way. Our highest achieving students can get an A in a class and get a 4.0, and it brings down their GPA. And I know this past graduation cycle, one of our valedictorians nearly passed on a class that was perfect for his major. It was our 3D, our drafting 4, 3D printing. He's a engineering major and had to debate whether or not to take this course that really would have prepared him for his future career, because he thought it would have a negative impact on his GPA and he would miss the chance to be valedictorian, something he'd worked very hard for 3 years and deservedly so. In the same vein, I know another student who did not finish as a valedictorian and probably would have had a great chance because he was had done 4 years of band and he was the, I don't know what's this guy? Drum major. Thank you. This guy. Yes. Because he had done that and, you know, had a passion for the music and had earned this leadership opportunity and you know, be commended for it, but because of that it brought down his GPA because he didn't have this opportunity. And so I'm struck by that. And of course, this young man still went to Princeton, so the story worked out pretty well for him, even if he didn't get the medal on graduation day. So for me, it kind of comes down to what is our primary goal. I know this isn't kind of a perfect decision, and rarely we don't have those. But our primary concern always is, or at least should be, what is in the best interest of our students. And so when I ask that, I think that in the best interest of our students, it is to offer these honors programs where they are, where it makes sense to make them accessible, and give these to our students that would be better served by them. So while I appreciate the debate, I think there's been some great points counter and some valid arguments. I'm not going to say great, I'm going to say some very valid arguments. I think the preponderance of the benefit is on the side of offering these programs, and so I will be in favor of it.
Thank you. Mr. Hallett?
Thank you, Pat. I just have a quick question and then a quick statement after that. With everything that Tim and Mike, that you all talked to the band directors and the choral directors, for even the folks who aren't doing it, did anyone oppose adding it?
No.
And see, that's one of the things, is the people who even aren't doing it because they know they may not have the right instrumentation vocally or instrumentally, they don't oppose it for the other schools because they know it's coming. They are in a rebuilding year. They may do it next year, they may do it in 2 years, they may do it in 3 years, but it's coming. And the thing is, we're thinking of the changes when we're saying, oh, well, they'll have to change their schedule when we get in. We have 35,000 students. This affects a handful of kids at 3 schools, a handful of kids, and it's doing the right thing for those kids. And the thing about it is, everybody changes the schedule. We're preparing these kids for college. What does every college student do at least once? I did it about 26 times. You change your schedule. You have to switch a class, and sometimes it's 2 or 3 weeks, 4 weeks into it before they cut it off, but you change. Then you have to go to a different teacher. You got to do this, you got to do that. These are strong kids. They can survive in that if they have to change chemistry from first period to sixth period because they need to fit band in at third period, or some other scheme. What it really comes down to is we're doing the right thing. If we push this forward, we're doing the right thing for the kids, and it's a minimal amount, and it's a great first step towards the rest of their lives and for the rest of the kids that are coming up through.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak before we vote? So we have a motion on the floor to approve the additions to the high school course list, and you have a revised, complete, comprehensive course list before you this evening, which includes 11th and 12th grade honors band and 11th and 12th grade honors choir. Are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 10 yes, 2 no.
Motion passes. That concludes the business on this evening's agenda. Are there any announcements before we adjourn? Ms. Vogt?
Yes, with your indulgence, I'd like to just share something with you. The sudden and tragic loss of my parents has been incredibly difficult for myself and for my family. Carbon monoxide poisoning truly is a silent killer. So many people in our Williamson County community have reached out with thoughts and prayers of support. I know I have been lifted up each day because of the caring people in my church, my school, and neighborhood, and also for the people on this body. My folks were really committed to each other and to their family and finishing what they started. They taught me the value of honoring commitments, and that's exactly what I will continue to do on this board and for my community. I want to thank you so much for your expressions of sympathy and care and concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements before we adjourn this evening? I see none. I want to thank everyone for being here this evening. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
It'd be nice if I could do it without being